Stephen Rice gripped the scaly, leathery hide of the grok, the massive apex predator rearing and thrashing, as the human held on for dear life, while a shocked galactic council watched in stunned disbelief. Rice, a 35-year-old human zoologist, adventurer, and absolute madman, had arrived on planet Nigeria just days prior. He came as part of a scientific exchange program between Earth and the Nigerian Galactic Council. But little did the Council know they were about to witness something completely insane that would forever change their perception of humanity. Rice's Nigerian liaison, a tall, slender, blue-skinned alien named Uko, had greeted him upon arrival. Uko filled Rice in on his mission to study the grok, a terrifying six-legged swamp monster with razor claws and venomous fangs, the most dangerous creature on Nigeria. No Nigerian has ever survived an encounter with a grok, Uko had warned, his forearms gesticulating for emphasis. This is an incredibly dangerous task. Are you sure you're up for this, human? But Rice had just laughed, a glint of excitement in his eyes. Danger is my middle name, Uko. I live for this shit. Point me to the swamp and let's get this party started. And now, as they trekked through the dense foliage of the vast mire swamplands, Uko voiced his mounting concerns. I must once again advise against this course of action, the alien said, ducking under a tangle of vines. The grok is no mere beast. It is a perfect killing machine, honed by eons of evolution. If you encounter one, your death is all but certain. Rice, hacking through the undergrowth with a machete, flashed a confident grin over his shoulder. I appreciate the concern, Uko, but trust me, I know what I'm doing. Studying deadly predators is what I do. It's my calling. And think about what this could mean for both our species, the scientific knowledge we could gain. Uko sighed, his iridescent skin shifting colors with worry. I hope you are right, Stephen Rice, for if you fail, it is not only your life on the line, but the reputation of your entire species. The Galactic Council is watching. This is your chance to prove humanity's worth, or seal your fate as a primitive, reckless race unfit for the galactic stage. Rice paused, meeting Uko's gaze with a determined stare. The stakes couldn't be higher. He knew that, but he also knew he couldn't back down. Not now. Not with humanity's future in the stars on the line. One man, one monster, one insane gambit to earn humanity's place among the galaxy's greatest civilizations. In the depths of the mire, the human and the grok were on a collision course with destiny. Only one would walk away. Rice hefted his machete and forged ahead into the swamp, into the jaws of death itself. Come what may, he would show the galaxy the tenacity, courage, and sheer batshit craziness that made humans the most dangerous creatures in the universe. The stench of death permeated the air as Rice and Uko stumbled upon the gruesome remains of a trundler. Guts and gore were strewn about the muddy ground, and bits of the armored hide were scattered like discarded puzzle pieces. Rice crouched down, inspecting a massive gash in the trundler's side. Look at these claw marks, Uko. The sheer strength it would take to pierce this thing's natural armor. It's unbelievable, Rice said, a mixture of awe and excitement in his voice. Uko shifted nervously, his eyes darting around the dense foliage. This is not a good sign, Stephen Rice. We should turn back now, while we still can. Before Rice could respond, a deafening roar shook the very ground beneath their feet. Birds erupted from the treetops, their panicked cries filling the air. Uko's skin turned a sickly shade of green, his four hands trembling as he gripped his plasma rifle. That was the grok. It must be close. We need to leave now. But Rice was already moving, his machete slicing through the undergrowth as he forged ahead. No way, Uko. We're too close to turn back now. I didn't come all this way just to run at the first sign of danger. As they pressed deeper into the mire, the ground grew softer, and soon they came across a series of massive footprints sunk deep into the mud. Rice knelt down, measuring the size of the prints with his hands. Holy shit! Based on these tracks, I'd estimate this grok is at least 30 feet tall and weighs several tons. It's an absolute behemoth. Uko's eyes widened in terror. All the more reason to abandon this foolish quest, human. No one has ever survived an encounter with a grok of that size. Rice ignored his companion's pleas, his eyes blazing with determination as he followed the tracks. They soon emerged into a clearing where several massive trees had been uprooted and trampled, their trunks splintered like toothpicks. "Look at this destruction, Uko. This must have been a recent grok attack. We're getting close." Rice pulled out a series of motion-activated cameras from his backpack, carefully setting them up around the clearing. "If we can't catch a direct glimpse of the grok, maybe these cameras can capture some footage of it. This could be groundbreaking for both our species, Uko." Uko said nothing, his forehands gripping his plasma rifle so tightly his knuckles turned white. He scanned the tree line, every rustle of leaves and snap of a twig making him flinch. As the twin moons of Niger rose over the misty swamp, casting an eerie glow across the landscape, Rice and Uko set about preparing their camp for the night. Rice deployed a compact force field generator, creating a shimmering dome of protective energy around their small clearing. "This should keep out any unwanted visitors," Rice said with a grin, patting the device. "Now let's see if those cameras caught anything interesting." As Rice pored over the footage on his portable display, Uko busied himself gathering edible plants and small game from the surrounding area. His knowledge of the local flora and fauna was invaluable, ensuring they had a nourishing meal even in the heart of the treacherous swamp. Suddenly a bone-chilling roar ripped through the night air, causing the very ground to shudder beneath their feet. Rice and Uko leapt to their feet, grabbing their weapons and peering into the inky darkness beyond the force field. "That sounded close," Uko whispered, his voice trembling slightly. "Too close." Rice nodded, his eyes scanning the tree line for any sign of movement. "Stay sharp, it could be anywhere." Moments later, a massive shape emerged from the shadows, its form blotting out the moon's pale light. Rice felt his heart skip a beat as he took in the sheer size of the creature. It was even larger than he had estimated, its armored hide glistening with moisture, and its eyes glowing a deep, malevolent red. Uko raised his plasma rifle, ready to fire, but Rice placed a hand on his arm. "Wait," he hissed. "Let's see what it does. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity." The grok sniffed the air, its massive head swinging from side to side as it tried to locate the source of the unfamiliar scents. Rice and Uko held their breath, hardly daring to move as the creature's gaze swept over their position. Suddenly the grok let out another deafening roar, the sound waves nearly knocking the two companions off their feet. With a sudden surge of movement, the creature charged forward, its massive bulk hurtling towards their campsite at a terrifying speed. "Move!" Rice shouted, diving to the side as the grok smashed through the force field like it was made of tissue paper. Uko barely managed to roll out of the way as the creature's massive claws tore through the ground where he had been standing moments before. The grok trampled through their campsite, crushing equipment and supplies beneath its feet. Rice watched in a mixture of terror and awe as the creature moved with a speed and grace that belied its enormous size. As quickly as it had appeared, the grok vanished back into the swamp, leaving a trail of destruction in its wake. Rice picked himself up off the ground, his heart pounding with exhilaration. "Did you see that, Uko?" he exclaimed, his eyes wide with excitement. "The way it moved, the power in those limbs, it was incredible." Uko stared at him in disbelief, his forearms still shaking from the close encounter. "Incredible. We nearly died, Stephen Rice. This creature is beyond anything we have ever faced." But Rice was already moving, gathering up what remained of their equipment and supplies. "We can't stop now, Uko. Not when we're so close. I need to see it again, to study it up close." Uko shook his head, knowing there would be no dissuading the determined human. "You are either the bravest or the most foolish being I have ever met, Stephen Rice. I pray that your curiosity does not lead us to our doom." Daybreak found Rice and Uko picking through the wreckage of their camp, salvaging what they could. Rice's force field generator was a mangled ruin, trampled beneath the grok's feet. Uko's plasma rifle was snapped in half. Most of their food stores were ruined, smashed and scattered. Rice held up his camera, miraculously unscathed. "At least we still have this. And the footage from last night, Incredible. Ukko glared, his yellow eyes narrowed. Your fascination will be the death of us, Rice. We barely survived. But we did survive, Ukko, and now we know what we're up against. We can't quit now. Rice stood, slinging his pack over his shoulder. I'm going to find that grok. Get more footage, up close this time. Ukko blanched, his skin paling to a sickly blue-green. Are you insane? After last night, you want to seek it out again? It's what I came here to do. I'll be careful. Stay hidden, keep my distance. Rice checked his machete, the blade gleaming. Look, we'll cover more ground if we split up. I've tracked dangerous game on Earth for years. I know what I'm doing. This isn't Earth, Ukko sputtered. And the grok isn't some Earth predator. I'll be fine, Rice assured. I've got my radio. I'll check in every hour. We meet back here by nightfall. Ukko threw up his 4 hands in exasperation. I cannot convince you otherwise, can I? May the stars watch over you, you mad human. Rice grinned and set off into the swamp, machete in hand. Ukko watched him go, dread coiling in his gut. The human's confidence would be his undoing. This he feared with certainty. The day grew hot and muggy as Rice pushed through the dense foliage, following game trails and grok tracks. Massive footprints sank deep into the soft loam, the claw marks unmistakable. Broken branches and flattened undergrowth marked the creature's passage. The destruction was awesome to behold. Rice followed the meandering trail for hours, senses straining for any sign of the grok. Sweat poured down his face in the sweltering heat. Insects buzzed incessantly. He ignored his growing thirst and fatigue, pushing ever deeper into the swamp. Suddenly, he spotted a trampled sapling, leaves still freshly bruised. A pungent, musky scent hung heavy in the air. Rice's heart pounded. The grok was close, very close. Creeping forward, machete at the ready, Rice emerged into a small clearing. There he spotted the grok, its massive form half submerged in a muddy pool. The creature appeared to be dozing, its tree-trunk limbs sprawled out, jagged teeth glinting. Rice brought up his camera with shaking hands and began to film, hardly daring to breathe. This was it, the footage of a lifetime. He zoomed in on the grok's scaled hide, the deadly claws, the powerful jaws that could crush a trundler's shell. Without warning, the grok's eyes snapped open, locking onto Rice. Slitted pupils narrowed to deadly focus. Rice froze, ice flooding his veins. Then the grok moved, surging up from the pool in an explosion of mud and leaves. Rice had only a split second to react before a massive clawed hand scythed toward him. He dove aside, feeling the wind of the groks passing, and hit the ground rolling. He scrambled to his feet and ran, crashing through the undergrowth in blind panic. Behind him, he heard the grok roar, a sound like 1,000 thunderstorms. Rice sprinted through the swamp, leaping fallen logs, dodging low-hanging vines. His heart jackhammered against his ribs. He could hear the grok behind him, feel the impact of its feet shaking the ground. It was gaining on him. He risked a glance over his shoulder and nearly stumbled in shock. The grok was right behind him, its jaws agape, eyes blazing with primal fury. Rice veered desperately to the side, but the creature anticipated his move, cutting him off. Rice skidded to a halt, chest heaving. The grok reared up before him, blotting out the sun, a living mountain of muscle and rage. Its jaws opened wide, a cavern of razor teeth ready to crush him to paste. In that moment, staring death in the face, Rice remembered something. A last desperate gambit. On Earth, years ago, he'd faced down a rampaging bull elephant. He'd stood his ground, raised his hand, and spoken softly until the elephant calmed. Could the same work on a grok? It was insane, suicidal, but he had no choice. As the grok lunged, Rice stood his ground, one hand raised. He locked eyes with the creature and started to speak, his voice low and steady. Easy. Easy there, big fella. I'm not going to hurt you. I'm a friend. You don't need to do this. The grok skidded to a halt, confusion flickering across its brutish face. It cocked its head, studying the puny human that dared to stand before it without fleeing. Rice kept talking, kept his hand raised, his voice soothing. "That's it, just relax. No one needs to get hurt, I just want to learn about you." Rice's radio crackled to life at his belt, shattering the moment. Uko's tinny voice squawked in panic. "Rice! Come in, Rice! Are you there? I heard the grok. Are you—" The grok roared, the spell broken, and charged. Rice had only an instant to hurl himself aside, as scythe-like claws ripped the air where he'd stood. The radio flew from his belt and shattered against a tree. Rice hit the ground hard. The wind knocked from his lungs. He looked up to see the grok looming over him, its eyes burning with rekindled rage. It raised a massive foot to crush him, and a plasma bolt struck it in the flank. The grok shrieked, more startled than hurt, and whirled to face this new threat. Rice glimpsed Uko at the edge of the clearing, clutching a pistol, his face set with determination. The grok hesitated, its massive head cocked to the side as it listened to Rice's soothing words. Rice kept his voice low and steady, maintaining eye contact with the creature as he inched closer, step by cautious step. "That's it, big fella, nice and easy. I'm not a threat." Rice's heart hammered in his chest, but he kept his movements slow and deliberate. The grok snorted, its nostrils flaring, but it didn't charge. Just as Rice thought he might actually pull this off, a plasma bolt sizzled past his ear and struck the ground near the grok's feet. The creature reared up with an ear-splitting roar, its eyes wild with fear and rage. Rice whirled to see Uko burst from the underbrush, plasma rifle raised. "Get back!" the alien shouted, taking aim at the grok. "No, wait!" Rice screamed, but it was too late. The grok charged, the ground shaking beneath its thundering steps. Rice acted on instinct, running towards the creature instead of away. As the grok lowered its head to gore him, Rice leaped, grabbing hold of the bony protrusions on its armored back. He hauled himself astride the bucking, writhing creature, clinging on for dear life as it thrashed and spun, trying to dislodge him. "Rice!" Uko shouted in horror, but Rice barely heard him over the rush of blood in his ears and the grok's furious bellows. The creature crashed through the undergrowth, trampling bushes and small trees, with Rice hanging on like a burr. Gradually, incredibly, the grok began to tire. Its bucking and twisting slowed, and Rice was able to catch his breath. Gently, hardly daring to believe it, Rice leaned forward and patted the grok's leathery hide. "Easy. Easy there. You're okay. We're okay." To his amazement, the grok seemed to respond to his touch and his voice. It stopped thrashing and stood still, sides heaving. Rice slid from its back, keeping one hand on its flank, murmuring reassurances. Step by step, Rice coaxed the grok back to the clearing where a stunned Uko waited, plasma rifle slack in his hands. As they emerged from the trees, Uko raised his weapon, aiming at the grok's head. "Uko, no!" Rice shouted, but too late. Uko fired and the plasma bolt struck the grok in the eye. The creature reared up with a shriek of agony, throwing Rice clear. He struck the ground hard, the breath driven from his lungs, stars exploding across his vision. Through a haze of pain, he saw the grok wheel and charge at Uko, blind with pain and rage. Uko stood frozen, rifle falling from nerveless fingers. Rice struggled to his feet, his battered body screaming in protest. He staggered forward, putting himself between Uko and the oncoming juggernaut. "Stop!" Rice threw up his hands, shouting with all his remaining strength. "Stop!" Incredibly, the grok skidded to a halt mere feet away, its remaining eye fixed on Rice. It towered over him, close enough that Rice could feel the heat of its breath, see the blood streaming from its ruined eye. For a long, tense moment, human and beast stared at each other. Then slowly Rice reached out a trembling hand and laid it on the grok's snout. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry." The grok let out a long, shuddering breath. Then it turned and limped away into the swamp, leaving a trail of blood behind it. Rice watched it go, then his legs gave out and he collapsed to the muddy ground. Uko rushed to his side, 4 hands fluttering over Rice's injuries. "You absolute madman," the alien muttered, voice shaking. "You complete and utter lunatic, you could have died, we both could have died." Rice couldn't help it. He started to laugh, even as every breath sent agony lancing through his battered ribs. "But we didn't," he gasped out. "We didn't." Ukko hauled Rice upright, slinging the human's arm over his shoulders. Together they limped back through the swamp towards their ship. Every step was torture, but Rice barely felt the pain. His mind was a whirl with the incredible, impossible thing that had just happened. He, a human, had ridden a grok, had touched it, communicated with it. It defied belief. As they stumbled up the ramp into the blessed cool of the ship, Rice knew his life would never be the same. The galaxy would never be the same. The human laughed as Ukko lowered him onto a medical bed, ignoring his friend's worried frown. He laughed even as the nanites knitted his broken bones and sealed his bleeding wounds. Let the Galactic Council censure him. Let them call him reckless, a danger, a maverick. None of it mattered. Because today, on this alien world, something extraordinary had happened. Today, Rice had looked into the eye of the ultimate predator, and the predator had looked back. In that moment of understanding between human and beast, the universe had shifted. As the ship broke atmosphere, and Rice slipped into a healing coma, his last thought was of the grok, the creature that had nearly killed him, but had in the end let him live. He knew he would carry the memory of that moment for the rest of his life, a reminder of the wonders that waited out there in the stars, for those brave enough or foolish enough to seek them. If you finished this story, please subscribe and like the video. Then leave a comment that says, "I liked the story," and I will heart every single one of them. It really helps me. Thank you for your time.